Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Uncensored CMO. Now, one of the questions I get asked regularly is, when am I going to do a proper B2B episode? It turns out a lot of you out there want to find out how B2B works and how you can be more successful in B2B. This has to be the episode for you, because I'm catching up with Colin Fleming, who is the EVP for Brand Marketing at Salesforce. If you didn't know, Salesforce are the third biggest tech company in the world, turning over an incredible $40 billion a year. So if anyone can tell us about how B2B marketing works, it must be the people that make the software that drive most people's B2B. Colin, if you didn't know, was a former racing driver and is now heading up brand marketing and has been for the last 13 years at Salesforce. Now, he has got some incredible stories and some amazing experience to share. This episode is packed with B2B gold. I know you're going to love it. Now, I'm joined by Colin Fleming, who runs the brand for Salesforce. And we are in Salesforce Tower in San Francisco with some pretty amazing views. How many floors have we got here?
61, yeah.
61.
And you got to go to the 61st.
I did, and I can confirm the views are spectacular.
We rolled out the red carpet. San Francisco is a beautiful day today.
Is there something about, does Salesforce like towers? Is there something in the tower
It's
idea?
a bit in our DNA. We have Salesforce towers in about 6 cities around the world, yes. And yeah.
It's a thing. It's a thing. Well, it's very impressive as well. Well, we're going to get into Salesforce. Let's talk about it and marketing and all that sort of thing. But let's start at the beginning, because you've got a rather unusual entry into your career, because you started life as a racing driver.
It's a non-linear career journey, that's for sure.
Definitely. Yeah. I mean, you talk about squiggly career. That's quite a squiggle from from the pit stop to the
indeed,
to the marketing suite. But tell us about a little bit about your career and how you got into motorsport, and what are the highs and lows of doing something as extreme as that?
From a very young age, I was hooked on Formula One. That's born and raised in California. Instead of driving around in circles like we do in the US here, I wanted to go not drive around in circles. So about 13, I moved to Europe. It's racing go-karts. Turned out I was quite good at it. I was picked up by Red Bull at a young age and got a chance to be Red Bull's Formula One test driver. I raced in Formula 3, Formula 2, Formula Renault, and things like that. And it was a wonderful experience. I mean, got to do what I had always searched at for doing. This kid called Sebastian Vettel came along, though, and they picked him over me.
Oh, no.
It's a bit rough in hindsight. 4 world championships later, they probably made the right call. But I took everything that I had learned in motorsports, which, of course, the fast driving, which is always the thing that people think about. But as an athlete, in that sense, you're spending so much time, more time actually, raising personal sponsorship. I was in front of CMOs at the age of 13.
Really?
Raising over $15 million in personal sponsorship. Yeah. So for me, like the idea of the shift to marketing was sort of a very familiar one. Yeah. And so 2008, I sort of made the kind of shift away from motorsports and said, look, give it a good go. Decided I was going to go try something else. And took the skills that I had learned into what is now a pretty successful marketing career.
Wow. Now from the outside, it looks like all glamour, right? Because I guess what you see the champagne, you see the action. Presumably, it's quite hard work to get to that kind of,
Oh, I mean, massive. Of course, it's hard work. I think anytime you're operating at that such a small percentage of people that get access to something, you're up against, of course, the world's best. The hard work, the dedication, the attention to detail, those things are so important. Of course, there's a lot of luck involved too, as with anything, right? And that's not discussed much when it comes to athletes. So much of it is being in the right place in the right time. I was so fortunate to be involved with Red Bull and some of the awesome opportunities I had. But you learn a lot along the way, and so much of those skills have been, directly translatable into a career. And I think that when people see my career path, they're like, those are two wildly different worlds. But to me, there's so many similarities, and that's where I've really tried to focus my energy.
So tell me, what would be the biggest things you've taken from that world of motorsport into your day job today?
I mean, dealing in a high-stress environment at Salesforce is a good skill to have. But no, all kidding aside, resilience is super important. You want to be able to pick yourself off the ground and continue to focus. A characteristic of any athlete is attention to detail and dedication. And anybody that's operated at that finite amount of that last 1% knows what dedication and hard work looks like. And I think, not only have I've been able to channel that from my career in prior, but also we have several former athletes in the company. It's just amazing. Not that we seek it out necessarily, but I think another individual you should have on your podcast, Nick Drake, at Google, former professional rugby player. There's amazing and how those translatable skills really apply. And I I think at this point we're just having fun with it.
Yeah. It's true though, because when we think about business, we think about the sort of technical skills and how smart you are and that sort of thing. Yeah. But actually sheer hard work is a huge component, isn't it? It doesn't matter how talented you are, unless you apply it and work really hard. It's not. I
will take hard work and dedication over an Ivy League education every single time.
100%.
I mean, it's just unbelievable to see. And, ideally you have both, don't you? But I think that that passion that comes with motorsports or any type of, special scenario there, passion, it's my number one personal core value. It's really important to really be able to kind of pour yourself into something. And, for the last nearly 13 years, I've poured my heart and soul into Salesforce. And, I think that that's been a really fun experience.
Now, we're going to come back to Formula One, aren't we, in a little while, because the circle has been closed rather neatly, isn't it, in your career, which is a fascinating kind of turn of events. But let's start at the beginning of your journey 13 years ago. So what was Salesforce like when you started compared to today? Because, I think I'm right in saying you're the third biggest software company in the world now, which is incredible to think.
We weren't
what
at
was
the
it
end of
like
2010,
13 years ago?
Well, I think, similarities in terms of what it is today, in terms of the values we exhibit and things that you'll see. But, at that point in time, we were not a global leader in software. We were a scrappy, probably past the startup phase. We were something like 3,000 employees. But it had a point of view, it had a personality, and that's what really drew me to the company. It's like, it was different. And I think that that's really what drew me to it. It's like coming from Red Bull, which is obviously a very unique company in and of itself. It really drew me the personality of the organization. And so I joined in product marketing. It was a really easy thing to do because it was a world-class product marketing company already. And God, it's amazing to think 13 years later in the journey we've built, we're now nearly an 80,000 person company, nearly 40 billion in revenue. And so it's been amazing to see that journey while still staying true. I think that's really important. And if you look at our brand today, one of the things that I'm most proud of is that personality, that spirit, that passion, that uniqueness, the differentiation that exhibits from the company. You can draw a direct parallel to back when I joined and before then. And I think that's something that we hold ourselves accountable to. I think, we're a big believer in tell the story that only you can tell, and big believer in we don't want to become the Oracle, the Microsoft, or the SAP. We want to be our own selves. And I think that that's
those places are taken, so you might as well.
Exactly. Why not be Salesforce? Right?
Yeah, exactly. No, it makes a lot of sense. Now, if I were to pick the number one request I get on this podcast by far is to talk about B2B. Because it's funny actually, but we and I were chatting earlier as well. There's something. Why does B2B feel like a second class kind of role to B2C? Because everyone wants to scramble to B2C roles, but actually B2B in terms of the influence and the investment and it can be just as exciting. So why does B2B have this sort of slightly apologetic feel to it?
It's not even from the outside in, it's also from the inside.
Yes,
you see, for some reason, B2B marketers in their heads have decided that our bar can be lower than a B2C company. Frankly, we've just called BS on that. Why? And, the same principles when you're buying a software product or a B2B scenario are the same when you buy a new pair of shoes, right? You're thinking about, is the quality there? Can I trust this brand? Does the personality, are the values aligned? Is the service appropriate? All those things are directly relatable on either end, B2B and B2C. But for some reason, we've decided that B2B has to be about data sheets and white papers and boring forms in front of everything. I think we're at this new kind of renaissance of B2C or B2B now that is unapologetic about it and just saying we can compete, in Cannes Lion. We can have work that operates at that altitude and that quality. We can do Super Bowl spots. We can do big brand activations that have personality forward and a point of view. And I think that's what I love about this kind of renaissance we find ourselves in is that apology is no longer accepted, or at least we don't accept it. And I think that that's really unleashed a ton of creativity. The amount of creatives that we've been able to attract from B2C talent, B2C organizations is unbelievable. And so I think we're starting to see this really take off in effect. And I think that's hopefully we're just getting started because I think it's a ton of fun.
I totally agree. And also the other thing that people forget is the transaction values in B2B are huge as well, right? So, we're not selling trainers, on the high street. We're selling some complicated, high-end, highly involved, highly engaged purchase decisions, aren't they? So make a
not only are they more complicated, but longer in duration too. Yeah. So, average deal cycle in the enterprise at a company like Salesforce is more than a year. And so think about the touch points you have with a purchaser or with a buying committee, and how those all have to be connected and thoughtful, and there has to be journey laid out. And so the principles are the same, but you could argue more complex than maybe a set of trainers, let's say. I think that's fascinating, and that's where technology comes into play and thoughtful differentiation comes into play. And I think that that's really why B2B really strikes me so nicely.
Now, I thought, we're here in Salesforce, probably the most successful B2B, business on earth at the moment, right? So you must have a few secrets to how B2B works. So I thought I'd try and extract as much insight into how the world of B2B works as possible. But let's start with the data, because I think there's some really interesting data points, aren't there, about how B2B makes decisions get made, right? And I know we were chatting about the 95-5 rule. So talk to me a bit about that, because that has quite a profound impact, doesn't it, on how you might look at where you spend your money, what kind of activity you do, and the balance between, long and short, as we say.
It's one of the most fundamental, perplexing things I see in marketing, when I see so many of my peers or other B2B organizations spend an inordinate amount of their budget on the final step of the funnel. Like, I've got to convert, and I've got to get my last touch attribution on this final data sheet that mattered. People don't buy products on data sheets. That does not work. And in fact, there's this amazing research from, I think it's Ehrenberg Bass Institute, as well as the LinkedIn B2B Institute, that says something to the effect of more than 80% of a purchasing journey happens on that first thought. If you're not part of that initial consideration set, you're not going to get bought. It doesn't matter how much money you throw in SEM ads or data sheets or anything like that. And so for me, that's been this unbelievable eye-opening experience. And we were talking earlier, I'm the only brand marketing leader that Salesforce has ever had, not because I'm a dinosaur and I've been here forever, because we didn't think about brand marketing. That wasn't a facet of our marketing organization. We did a lot of down funnel product marketing and made a big business off of it. But we've started to open our eyes towards that 95-5 rule, that there's a whole world that we weren't considering. And so how do we think about doing longer term, more thoughtful marketing that wins the hearts and minds, that makes sure that our situational awareness is there, so that when somebody thinks about Salesforce or the 33 category entry points we were discussing, and when people think about our types of technology, we're the first company that comes to mind. That is my ultimate KPI. And that is where I spend the majority of my budget, is making sure that when they think of those 33 points, we're the company. And so we do more than most. I would always want it to be a bigger percentage of overall budget, but we do more than most on a top funnel, winning the hearts and minds, thinking about that 95-5 rule. And, I think we've been broadly regarded for that and awarded for that work. And yet I still feel like we're just getting started. Yeah.
No, I think definitely. I mean, if I look at the System 1 database and look at the kind of advertising that B2B does, it's quite shocking. So B2C, we would say about half of all ads that we measure have no impact on the long-term health of the brand, right? Which is the old adage, In B2B, that's 80%. So 4 in every 5 B2B ads that get made, we measure have no response on the audience at all and don't change the long-term fortunes of the brand. So,
and yet the attribution model says that final 20% is worth investing X% of your budget.
Yeah.
But that's marketing to an attribution model. And I think that's the biggest flaw I see people in large B2B organizations, is they're focused on marketing to a 90-day attribution model. That's not how people buy. People don't, attribution models do not buy products. Humans do. And why not market to them? It's much better.
Yeah. You're right. You made a good point there about 90 days, because, the window within which you measure your performance makes an incredible difference, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But you just said about you might take a year to get an enterprise client on board.
I think 465 days, if you look at our insurance business, is the average deal cycle.
And would that be from the first engagement to signing up, presumably?
Yeah, and the engagements are probably later than...
That's late. Back to your point about 80% make a decision before.
Exactly. So
that's probably a much longer cycle, isn't it?
It's just amazing. And when you look at that, it becomes so obvious. And yet when I speak to my peers or speak to others in B2B, it's just a heightened sense of consciousness. And I think there's so many companies that just think about that, got to make the quarter, got to make the month mentality. And, I live in that too. We got to make the month. We're a public company. We got to be thinking about that all the time. But we have to realize that the job to be done can happen earlier. It can happen at a different altitude. And I think once we started kind of internalize that, that data has helped me win arguments with the board about where to invest, with our CEO. And I think those are really, really important things, kind of freeing environments that I think hopefully through folks like the B2B Institute and, maybe from people, listeners of this podcast, we can start to open our eyes a little bit.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've learned this massively in my role. So I've been doing B2B role for 4 years now, before all B2C. And I've been blown away by the power of doing the brand building work, because it doesn't necessarily pay off straight away, but it has this cumulative effect that the return just gets better and better and better. So your activation just works harder and harder and harder because you've got this halo, but you have to commit to it and you have to be consistent and keep on delivering it. But the payback's enormous.
We did a cohort analysis looking at people that were exposed to brand and demand advertisements versus just demand. And the brand ad, the dual, was 6x higher than just solely activation ads. So, I mean, again, that might not show up in an attribution model because the demand ad is going to get all the last click value, but it starts to show you there's a bigger story than these attribution models. And we have our own attribution model. We're building it. We're learning it. But there's a human capacity that I think we all need to be reminded of occasionally, and that's important.
100%. Now, one of the other things that stands out about what you do at Salesforce is your investment in kind of distinctive brand assets, going back to sort of another Ehrenberg Bass sort of, staple. And you've done it very, very well. It's quite rare in B2B to see kind of an investment in, your logo and the cloud and the way, the font and the characters that you've evolved over time and kind of introduced. Was that has that always been the case, or is it something you've discovered on your journey?
It's been a journey, I would say. We started there. We started with our first advertisement was a jet fighter shooting down a biplane, that biplane being Oracle or Siebel at the time. And so we've always had a personality and a spirit to the Salesforce. But about 10 years in, when we started selling to the large organizations and we started being more of an enterprise-focused company, we started to become those enterprise-focused companies. We lost the personality, we lost the spirit, we started to look like every other company. There was I remember a reckoning very vividly actually inside the company where we just kind of looked at ourselves and were like, you could put any B2B company's logo on that presentation or whatever it was, and it would hold up. And that was a moment in time for us. We're like, we have to rethink this. And so we kind of channeled ourselves, and I was fortunate to enter the creative team at that point in time. And the brief to me was bring back our soul. And you couldn't bring back what it was in 1999 because the world has moved on and things like this. And so we sort of turned to our community actually, and we have a very robust community that has created this kind of environment that we find ourselves in. We call Trailhead, incredible character set. We call Astro and Friends, Astro being our main character, a mascot, if you will. And it's just been amazing to see the journey that we've been on with there from why the hell are they doing that? To now seeing study from, LinkedIn B2B Institute and Ehrenberg Bass saying that these distinctive assets are immensely valuable. And, a great example of this, like, what does the Geico gecko have anything to do with insurance? It doesn't. It creates an association. It creates a playfulness. And, that was a multi-year journey inside the organization. To many people walking into Bank of America or these large organizations going, why are there goats and bears and Astros on my thing? To now being probably the most distinctive brand in B2B, I would argue. And you'd have to rip it from the cold, dead hands of anybody in the company. We just love it. The culture has admired it, welcomed it, and I think that's really a positive. So it's not for everybody. Not everybody can adopt what we've been able to. We're fortunate to have a CEO who's a larger-than-life personality that exudes this and really challenges us. And I have to say, when I look back at it after the time we've spent on it, it's been pretty amazing to see what we've accomplished, and we'll keep building it.
I genuinely think this is almost marketing's best kept secret, actually, in terms of characters. Yeah. I mean, I think if I go back and put my client hat on again, I would have gone, why are we having these kind of cartoon, childish characters sort of thing? Now that I understand a bit more of the science behind how advertising and brands work, I would start there. If I was building a business tomorrow, I'd start there because they can show up everywhere. They immediately, create positive associations. They make you stand out from competition. Because of course, in any business, you're thinking about you. But when you go out and realize the sheer number of software companies that are out there, all with the same blue logo, all that say the same things, and you've got something that absolutely stands out. I mean,
and the best part about it was it wasn't us sitting around a boardroom drawing these characters. It came from our community. We did not design most of these characters. They came from the community. And so it's really, and each one of our characters has a role, and they play a role in there. It's like each character represents a member or a group of our ecosystem within the business. And so I think they're theirs, they're not ours. And it really has helped build like a connection to the organization. And so, advertising is there, but also the community side is there, and we see sort of benefits all around.
Yeah. Well, it makes sense because, you build software that help people talk to their customers, right? So you it's good to hear that you're also doing that.
What a concept, right? Yes. What a concept.
There you go. Not just selling it, actually doing it. Now, another thing that might appear a little bit surprising as we're talking about B2B is doing a Super Bowl ad. how did that come about? Because was it a big sell? Just go, I know what, we're going to go on the biggest stage, biggest advertising stage with a B2B brand.
Yeah. And it was a tough one internally because 2011, we did a Super Bowl ad. It did not go very well for us, let's just say. So it's sort of it was like, oh, we'll never do that again. Oh, okay. And so we had to overcome quite a lot. But I will tell you, we did not design said ad with the intent of being a Super Bowl ad. We built it because we felt the message was right. And then we were like, wow, this is a really powerful message. We should put it on the Super Bowl.
Now, just describe it for anyone who hasn't seen it.
Yeah.
Just describe the ad.
For sure.
It is quite powerful. Yeah.
It is. So this was 2020, right before the pandemic, which was a very different period of time, of course. And we had just hired Matthew McConaughey, who I'm sure we'll talk about at some point here, as our brand sort of advisor. And we started thinking about what can differentiate Salesforce. And it was about values. And, can we talk about how our CRM is better than Microsoft's or somebody else's? Sure, we can do that. That's not really a Super Bowl ad. And so we thought about what are the differentiating factors. And this was a moment in time when Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and everybody's going to space. Yeah. That was the kind of thing, right? And yet we've got all these problems here in the US. Like we've got climate change, we've got all, strife, economic or equality differences and whatnot. And we're like, well, why are we going up there instead of focusing on
out down here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was a very simple idea.
Yeah.
And so we called it the new frontier. The new frontier isn't up there, it's down here. And so we really tried to just turn CEO and executives' attentions to the problems we have here and to focus our energy as businesses on being a platform for change. And that's one of our key values as a company is our business can be the ultimate platform for change. And so it was just a very simple idea that we came to life with a lot of fun. And, we were broadly regarded for the ad and we're really proud of it.
Now, a lot of brands would say, oh, we've got this celebrity as our brand ambassador, right? And like, you see a new car launch and it was in collaboration with, somebody, and you just think they didn't even touch the paintwork, sort of thing. But actually, Matthew McConaughey does have an involvement in the business, he does, doesn't he? So how does that work?
Yeah, he's not a brand ambassador, he's a brand advisor. And so he is a true advisor. He and I will sit down and talk about messaging direction and talk about the latest research with our brand, what's working, what's not, what's happening in the world. And so he and I, we just have a brand campaign we launched just a couple months ago around artificial intelligence. And it was fascinating, in its infancy to sit down with somebody of his stature and unbelievable connection to the consumer and to a personal individual to talk about what is happening in artificial intelligence. And, it's so fascinating. I will bring the business perspective and I'll bring the research and I'll bring a lot of the work, and he'll go so much with instinct and his unbelievable ability to connect with humans. And it feels like it works so beautifully. And so I love the opportunity to collaborate with him. He's brilliant. He's as advertised, wicked creative, very smart, very in tune with the values of the company. The reason we chose Matthew is just we have such a strong values alignment. So it's been a ton of fun. We're just getting started with him though. I think we have our newest campaign, Ask More of AI out. And it's been really, really fun. So we'll keep going.
I've been listening to his green lights, and he's incredibly profound, isn't he? Very, very smart, but also his observation of the world is just fascinating.
And that's not a book; that's just Matthew. That's who he is.
Yeah, he just talks, doesn't he? And just all these profound thoughts and connections, the way he joins things together. It's just really. I can see why.
Special one for sure.
See why it'd make you kind of think and challenge yourselves differently. Yeah.
He makes me uncomfortable, which I think is the point.
Yeah.
I've been leading this brand organization coming on 10 years now, and so. It helps me get outside the comfort zone a little bit, and challenges are to push our brain in another way. And I think that it would have been easy for us to go down the path of artificial intelligence where everybody else is, which is like bleeding innovation and things like this. But we chose to go the other way, which is about highlighting how trust is so important and really thinking about the questions we should be asking of AI. And, a lot of that came from him, and to his credit.
That's really interesting, isn't it? Because I think as humanity is looking at AI pretty much as an existential threat, isn't it? But flipping that to go, well, what can AI, do for us positively, and how can it make positive change in the world?
I mean, we looked at it in the general, like the brief was there's a gold rush mentality happening right now, and all those same policies, same things are exhibiting themselves, like blatant disregard for security and privacy of our data, not looking about what it means to the broader perspective. We're just chasing something, and we are a firm believer in AI. I mean, we've been at this business for 10 years, and we were one of the pioneers of AI in enterprise, but we think we can do it in a trusted way, and we can do it in ways that don't put us at odds with our customers, for example. And I think that's really important for us.
Do you think AI will make humans extinct?
No. I think there's a big empowerment push here, but I think there's some things. I mean, we've all seen the movie Terminator. We know what happens.
Everyone's thinking, isn't it?
I mean, everybody's going there for sure, and we should look at it. I mean, for sure.
Well, Elon, didn't he suggest like we should pause for 6 months and have a conversation?
I don't know if we want to go to Elon at the moment, but what I will say is there are real things we have to be conscious of and really thinking about, are we putting our values in front of this? And anytime you see companies, we've seen this with every revolution, whether it be social or mobile, there's great examples of companies that have put growth or technology innovation in front of trust or in front of something else. And I think that's when we get into trouble. And our 5 core values as a company are trust, customer success, innovation, equality, and sustainability. And anytime we see those get out of order in terms of priority, we kind of catch ourselves to say trust has to be the number one thing. And so we've chosen thoughtfully, not just with our marketing messaging, but also with our product, to put trust first. And I think that's unique in the marketplace right now.
Well, it's very profound at the moment. I mean, like, you couldn't want for more trust at the moment, with the way social media is going and world events and everything else. I mean, that's pretty.
And we're broadly regarded
powerful.
as one of the most trusted companies in the world. I mean, people invest their most sensitive data, their customer data with Salesforce globally. And so it's important for us to make sure we not only maintain that trust, but also earn it in this new environment. And so think about how we innovate, how we market, how we message. It's got to be with values first. It always should be.
Definitely. And one of the other things that always comes to mind when I think about Salesforce is Dreamforce, of course. Yeah. And there aren't that many kind of B2B events that sort of like spill over into sort of like national news, right? I mean, it's just like, and the thing, I've never been, but the thing that I observe from the outside is the energy and the engagement levels just seem incredible. And it gets talked about way beyond just a kind of internal kind of conference that you might have. What is it about Dreamforce then? Or what have you created, or how did you create something that has kind of had that much impact?
Well, we need to get you next year. That's important.
Well,
we make sure you have my invitation to come for sure. It started out as a very modest user conference. It was a user conference. I think we had 1,200 people at the first one in 2004. This was just our 21st one, I believe it was. And so, it started out as a basic user conference. But as it grew, we chose to not make it scale blindly, but scale in terms of depth and the nuance within it. And so how do we add more insight around culture, around leadership, around sustainability, around equality, these things? And that's been really fascinating for us, for sure.
So who well, firstly, 2 questions, right? Who gets to go, and also who gets invited to speak? What have been your favorite kind of moments or speakers that you've had in Dreamforce? Yeah.
Oh, there's so many. And it's actually not the big headliners that I'm so passionate about at Dreamforce. It's the little nuanced topics that, really catch the minds. It's known for its size. I mean, there's been years we've communicated with 170,000 people at Dreamforce. It's a massive cultural event for us, and we're really proud of that. And it comes from that breadth and depth of content we bring to life. And there's something for everybody, right? And we usually theme the day, so every day has a bit of a nuance. And one day will be all about deep innovation. One day it'll be all about leadership. The other day it'll be about wellness, for example. And so you can kind of go on this really big life journey, actually, in the context of Dreamforce, and really come back with a fresh perspective. So I think that's number one, is making sure we're throwing a myriad of things at you. I think that too many times you go to these user conferences and it's like, here's the new button, we put it right here, and you got to know how important that button is. Like, we'll do a lot of that at Dreamforce. We have 1,500 sessions at Dreamforce, and we talk a lot about where the buttons are. But we also try to mix it with interesting things. And, this year was all about AI, and we brought not just about technology advancement, but the ethical considerations. We brought about leadership. We brought about public policy. And so, we've had world leaders. We've had Barack Obama. We've had Michelle Obama there. We've had Republican congressmen and Republican senators this year. We try to bring a balance of perspectives. Tons of media journalists, of course. Jane Goodall was there this year. She might be my favorite. I just love Jane Goodall. Yeah. We had this really interesting panel. This might be my favorite panel ever. We had Jane Goodall, Rainn Wilson, and Dave Matthews on one panel, and it was all around sustainability. Wicked good. I mean, just such different life perspectives around one common topic. And so that's just one example of how Dreamforce comes to life. And the really value for the attendee is to really expand their brain a little bit. We call it our family reunion. We don't call it an event. We call it the Salesforce Family Reunion. And it truly is that. You see people walk around smiling, connecting, learning, having fun, giving back. And I think that's really the magic sauce of Dreamforce. And every year we try to find a way to bring a new layer, a new dimension to it. And I think somehow 21 years on, we still find a way to do that.
But I think you've tapped into one of the most fundamental points about B2B marketing, which everybody forgets is that what you should be doing is trying to add value to your customer, not sell them your product. But it's amazing. One of the things since I moved into B2B is just ask people to, show me your sales presentation, and it will be, this is us, right? And it will literally, and as a client, I remember like, well, do you even know what I need? And so one of the things I've been trying to do in kind of my role is, if we can add enormous value to our customers, they might just buy us, at some point in the future, but they'll certainly remember us, who we are. But if we just go and go, oh, can I tell you about what we do? And one little example is, I remember meeting Andrew Robertson, he's the CEO of BBDO, and had half an hour with him, and we'd just done some work on diversity. It's called Feeling Seen, and what we'd done is we'd basically done a massive test looking at how different groups feel when they see themselves in advertising, and how messages connect with different audiences. And so what it worked out is sort of advice for people to how to get it right. Because it's one of those things that people worry about. It's like, if I get it wrong, I don't want to offend a whole group. And equally, the benefit of getting it right is high. And it's really interesting because I presented this to him for half an hour, and at the end he said a really interesting thing. He said, do you know what? If you had said to me you were going to go and present System 1 for half an hour, I wouldn't have turned up. Right? But you've actually addressed a very big concern of mine, and you've taught me something that I really wanted to know about, and you've given me a whole lot of value. I'm going to buy you anyway. It was like, but we forget that, don't we? Because you can imagine like putting on a conference, we're going to tell you about the buttons, and we're going to...
Because we're marketing to attribution models.
I know, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And
because in our head, the buttons are the biggest thing, right? And actually we've got to think, well, what do our audience care about? Yeah. And can we do something about that? Yeah. And they'll get the buttons anyway. And then the buttons are not that hard to figure out, so that will come later, sort of thing. But I think that's one of so many B2B businesses get that wrong. It's just like another email telling you about the new 15.2.0.5. We've now upgraded our button, sort of thing.
Well, the biggest thing for us at Dreamforce is, I mentioned the breadth and depth of content, but we'll debut and create about 30 different customer stories every year at Dreamforce. And what's fascinating is when the healthcare CEO comes to Dreamforce, and I'm like, oh, I've got 3 healthcare stories you got to see. He's like, I don't want to see that. I want to see the retail story. I want to see the manufacturing story. I want to learn from others outside of my space and what they're doing. And you get this interesting smorgasbord of like interesting stories you can pull into a perspective. And what I'm most proud about is people walk away from Dreamforce with a list of to-dos. And it's usually innovation to-dos of like, I got to think about this differently. I got to approach that differently. And by the way, once those things happen, they attach our products in their mind to it. And that's wonderful. That's great. We sell a lot of stuff at Dreamforce, but that's not the intent. We don't go there with a revenue goal.
Well, it's back to 95, right? Isn't it? It's the 95, not the 5.
Exactly.
In this case. I think the really interesting thing is, why do people go to conferences? Because I think, when you put a conference on, you think, oh, they're there to come and listen to us. But it's things like they want to network, they want a change of scene. They want to be inspired. They want to break. There's so many needs there. And I think what's amazing about Dreamforce is what you put together is something that addresses why people want to be together. And, rather than get the hard sell.
We've studied this quite a lot, and
you should have done.
It's been said that Salesforce might just be an events company that happens to sell software on the side, because we take our events pretty seriously. And there's 4 reasons people come to our events. They come to learn, and that's not just about our technology. They come to learn about reskilling and things like that. So they come to learn. They come to connect, and so that's the networking. And it's not just meeting new people, but it's also the family reunion aspect we saw. They come to have fun, and that's why these large conferences have concerts and slides and things like this. And they come to give back, and this is where a little bit of Salesforce magic comes in, where we'll do full volunteer days, we'll do philanthropy, we'll do sustainability efforts, and people get those 4 things coming together. Or I think where this a little bit of the Salesforce magic is, I think conferences do really great at some of those things, but not all at once. And I think that's when you boil it down, all the research, it boils down to those 4 things.
Hugely powerful. I remember very early in my career, actually, I wanted to go into innovation and kind of creating some challenger brands in this organization. And I read up some books on it, and I put a big pitch to the company and ended up getting some funding. It's really super exciting. And I got to this point where I realized I don't know anyone else in the company that does what I do anymore, right? Because I'd built this thing and it was quite unique. And I suddenly had this real need to go out of the organization and network and meet people in other businesses in the same situation. And they felt just the same. They were also going, well, no one else is doing what I'm doing. And that's what this does, isn't it? Is you get to meet people that are in the same situation, facing similar challenges, and you can kind of support and, help each other out, which is super.
We're all humans. We have to be inspired. That's why the movie industry exists.
Yes.
What's interesting about Salesforce is when I get to that point, I need to be inspired, or any of us need to be inspired. We don't go to competitive conferences. We go to Disneyland. We go to movies. We go to unique experiences that say, and again, back to that B2B versus B2C, the way that the human mind works is not different in B2B and B2C. It's the same. And so can you apply yourself to that same principle is where we find interest.
But that's where creativity happens, right? So, all my ideas will come when I'm out on my bike trying to set a fastest time down a particular segment of the road, sort of thing, You'll be doing stuff like that where I go, oh yes, there's the idea.
I'm a big thinker in the shower too. A lot of my
exactly.
Great ideas come in the shower. Yes.
Yeah. do you have like a setup at home for your racing cars? I was going to say, in my head, you've got you've got the whole thing going on.
Well, that's funny. When I do those things, my mind shuts off. I could do it for an hour and not tell you what I thought about. Yeah. Same with running. I'm a big runner. Yeah. And sometimes you got to turn the brain off for a bit, which is important.
Yeah, you do. No, it's very refreshing. Well, this does bring me full circle, right? And because the listeners and viewers will probably not be too surprised to hear that you're now back involved with Formula One, aren't you? In a professional capacity.
Funny
so the world has kind of gone round in a full circle now. So tell me how. Well, firstly, why, and how you're activating in Formula One now.
Well, I think I'm always in search of that situational awareness we talked about. And one of the things that's really interesting about Salesforce is everybody on this podcast, listening to this podcast, interacts with Salesforce every single day, but you would never know it because we're a behind the scenes technology, right? You never see us, but hopefully we're doing a good job behind the scenes. And so one of the challenges for us is how do we think about closing that gap a little bit? How do we think about putting our brand in front of a broader audience? And Formula One, obviously, what we've seen with what Liberty Media has done and Drive to Survive with Netflix has just had this explosion in popularity. And there's this really interesting story that we kind of sold the deal internally, which is there's 500 million fans that follow Formula One, and it's a rabid fan base, and it's amazing to see what they've done. Less than 1% of them actually go to a Grand Prix. And so what happens with the other 99%? How is Formula One engaging with them, and how are the teams engaging with them? And frankly, that's where we come in. And so we were able to build this incredible story and implement technology to help Formula One think about that 99%. Think about that 499 million other fans, and how do we drive better personalization, better experiences, really reinvent the fan experience. And Salesforce powers that for Formula One. And it's pretty awesome to see. And so, yes, it is full circle. And I go back and I see some of my friends in the paddock, and it's really enjoyable. But to really think about helping grow the sport that I love so much. And I'm still the guy 15 years on that wakes up at 4:30 in the morning in the US to watch every practice and every Formula One qualifying and whatnot. So, and my son is now involved in it, which is kind of fun to watch. But to now see it prosper and to help connect that fan journey is so really great experience.
So I love the fact that 13-year-old you was pitching CMOs to get a bit of sponsorship to get you to the next level of
and now
racing.
It literally turned 180.
You're the guy with the money.
Indeed. But it's great. We do the same thing with the Olympics. We do with other sports as well. And it's just amazing to see when I look at fans of any sport, they're just really passionate customers. And we are the customer company. So it's just like this natural connection for us. And, we don't do a lot of sports marketing, but we try to do really thoughtful ones and ones that are high profile. And I think the Formula One has really been really valuable for us. We're thrilled with the response. We're thrilled with what Liberty Media and the Formula One Group has done too. I mean, what a world-class, it's a masterclass in what they've done in building the fan base. And so hopefully we can continue to grow.
I like the fact you found an authentic role for sale. You haven't just put the logo on the car, right? Which is what most people seem to do. You've actually found an authentic role that tells a story that your customers will be able to, will be inspired by.
I mean, marketing is storytelling.
Yeah.
It's not slapping our logo on stuff. And we could have done that 10 years ago. We've been a large company for a long time now, but we needed to find that right angle. And it's similar with the Olympics. It's unbelievable to think about the fan base that the Olympics has, right? And so very similar narratives, and we just needed to find the narrative that made sense for us. And I think we've done that. And I think we're just getting started telling the story for sure.
Well, the other thing that I think people forget in B2B marketing is people in B2B do watch Formula One. And they do watch the Olympics and they do watch the World Cup. You know what I mean?
Funny, that did come up a lot when we thought about it, yes.
It's funny, like somehow we think B2B people just go home and work and they have no lives and all they do is think, look at spreadsheets and think about buying things.
The demographics are unbelievably aligned with ours.
Totally, yeah.
So, because B2B buyers are humans.
I can't remember someone was kind of challenging the podcast in terms of, how big value is it going to be? And I'm like, oh yeah, I'm just talking to those very influential, senior, wealthy people that oversee big budgets and spend a lot of money and also do lots of other things as well in life, So it's like, who wouldn't want that audience?
It's amazing. And when you look at the demographics too, like Formula One is IT. It's IT.
It is, isn't it? Yeah.
Massive IT heavy. And so turns out IT people buy a lot of software. Shocking that,
Now, the other thing I imagine, I'm going to hazard a guess here, that it plays a role as well for your customers in terms of entertaining customers, because you've got somewhere to bring them to as well. Do you use it in that capacity?
Of course, yeah. I mean, there's three capacities we use it in. Of course, the trackside signage and branding and things like that. Clearly, we get a lot of exposure in that sense, and so that helps with aided awareness for sure. It doesn't help unaided awareness, which is really, really important. We want to close the gap in that situational awareness. So we do a lot of hospitality, clearly, and we'll bring high profile executives and fans to the racetracks and give them unique, unlived experience before. So that's been fun. Hot laps around the circuit, meet and greet with the drivers, garage, things like that. So really unique experience. But the third part is the most interesting part, which is the product storytelling and like taking people behind the scenes and showing how Formula One runs on Salesforce and showing how when they bought the tickets or when they opened the mobile application or when they visited Formula1.com or they watched online, that's happening through the power of Salesforce is an invaluable experience in terms of like applying it to their own organizations. And so the ability to tell that story at large, not just with Formula One, but with McLaren is another partnership we have. To think about the day-to-day operations. McLaren is the most popular sport or team in the world now in terms of the fan base. And so there's fun stories to tell. And I think, as I mentioned, any B2B marketer, and I don't think we think about this enough, is a storytelling role.
Huge, yeah.
And it doesn't matter if you're in the marketing operations team, you're in the finance team. If you're in marketing, you're a storyteller. And I don't think we focus on that enough as an industry at large.
Well, the other thing, and Gabe, because anyone in a role is going to focus a lot on their own business and how things are done, but it's so inspiring to see, how the Formula One team address this problem I've got, right? And it's often when you go out of your kind of normal sphere that's when you suddenly go, oh yeah, that's how I'm going to solve that problem. Oh yeah, because that's how they do it over there. It's kind of like, there's almost no problem that hasn't been solved by another category or another segment, right, that you can get inspired by. So that makes a difference. Let me finish on this question then. So if you were giving some advice to someone who's listening to this thinking, oh, I quite like the sound of what Colin's doing, what would be your advice to kind of succeed in the kind of role you're doing, or if you're maybe more junior to kind of get the sort of role that you've got?
Look for inspiration outside of your world. I think outside of the obvious places. I think that's when I look at successful marketers that I follow and admire or within the organization, they always have such a unique perspective on things. So like find that story that only you can tell as an individual, as a personal brand, as a company, as a group, whatever it may be. Find that story and tell that story, perfect it, refine it, build it. And I think that's, go back to storytelling. And I think you tell it to humans, tell that story to humans. Don't tell it to attribution models. Don't tell it to anything but those that are willing to listen.
As in marketing, we talk about the points of differentiation, and it's just as true for personal brand. Is why will someone remember you? What will they remember you for? Yeah. And will you stand out amongst all your competitors?
I mean, my whole organization is around building audience, moving those audience, and finding unique and clever ways to activate them. That is something my entire organization wakes up and thinks about every single day. How do I grow the people that are watching us? How do I engage them in some capacity and move them into the next step? And give them unique experiences. And if we do those things really, really well, I think our technology, thankfully, we're blessed to have a world-class product that can deliver a lot of and solve a lot of problems for a lot of people.
Amazing. Colin, thank you so much. It's been an absolute blast.
This has been fun. Yeah, thanks. Appreciate it.
Great. Cheers. Thanks for listening to the Uncensored CMO. I hope you enjoyed that. If you never want to miss an episode again, please do hit the subscribe button wherever you get your podcasts. And if you're watching on YouTube, click on subscribe there too. If you want to follow me, you can do. I'm over at John Evans on LinkedIn, or find me on Twitter as well, at Uncensored CMO. Thanks again for listening and watching. I'll see you next time.